So I just finished a book called Brunelleschi's Dome by Ross King. It was pretty good. Nice and short. 167 pages. It focuses on the story of Filippo Brunelleschi in Florence and his construction of the Santa Maria del Fiore. Basically what I learned about Brunelleschi is that he was brilliant, pretty arrogant, hard to work with, but brilliant. Like, I think a cloth guild or something. A guild commissioned the creation of some enormous cast bronze doors for the baptistry of San Giovanni. Now, it seems like in Florence they held competitions for pretty much everything. So they held this big competition. They say, here's a panel of bronze, make a scene from the Bible on this panel and submit it in 1 year. And then they pick the best ones out of that. Brunelleschi and Ghiberti tied. And by the way, this is so cool. The Museo Nazionale del Bargello has both of the original submissions of Brunelleschi and Ghiberti. The other submissions were probably melted down and made into cannons. Where was I going? Oh yeah, so they both won. The guild said, all right, you both are awesome, so you both get to make these doors. And Brunelleschi is a bit independent and arrogant, and so he refused the commission because he didn't want to work with Ghiberti. And ever after that, he and Ghiberti are enemies. So in Florence, the foundation stone for the Cathedral Santa Maria del Fiore had been laid in 1296. The final design wasn't completed until 1367 by Neri de Fioravanti. So pretty much, this church has been under construction forever. And so Brunelleschi was born in a house from which he could see the foundations of this church, and so he grew up near this unfinished church. And so then in 1418, a competition was announced for whoever could take this design and make it something that it's actually possible to build, because it was a ridiculously optimistic design that they had no way of actually building. So the design called for this enormous dome. It is by a pretty good margin the biggest dome in the world even today. Brunelleschi and Ghiberti and some other people all sent in ideas. The difference was all the other ideas called for this huge thing to be built in the middle, a framework, and then the dome would rest on that framework while the mortar dried. Brunelleschi's was the only one that didn't call for that. He thought that he could build this dome without supporting it. But he and Ghiberti tied again, and they both got the same money for it. Brunelleschi is obviously a mechanical genius. This thing is full of diagrams. Let me find one. Oh, here's a diagram. It's a diagram of his ox hoist. Decades ahead of its time, according to the book. It can raise things up to the top of the dome and then lower things slowly without having to unhook the ox. There are some things that he didn't do very well. They wanted to build this thing out of marble, and they had no local marble quarries. And so he came up with an idea for a boat that would take it most efficiently. He got this boat built, he got it loaded up with all the marble, and then before it even made it to the first stop on the trip, it sank. So he wasn't infallible, but he was very smart. Oh, and there's some cool stories that are completely unrelated to the dome. He played this elaborate prank on a carpenter named Manetto, where he got everyone in Florence to call him Matteo. Matteo was a well-known person, and so he had Matteo hide, and had Matteo's brothers go up to Manetto and call him Matteo. So the next day he woke up, and the real Matteo showed up and said, I had this weird dream where I was you. He actually believed for a while that he and Matteo had switched bodies, and he ended up figuring out what had really happened, getting really upset, moving to Hungary, and becoming super rich. So happy ending. Ooh, one thing that I found kind of funny is it talked about how all the smart people during the Renaissance were really, really ugly. So Brunelleschi's ugly, Ghiberti's ugly, Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, they're all ugly. And the only attractive and talented person in the Renaissance, it said, was Raphael. See, so it's got lots of fun little trivia. Ooh, I almost forgot my favorite one. I can't believe I almost forgot my favorite one. Brunelleschi was pioneering perspective in art. If you look at Renaissance art, it's balanced and it's symmetrical. The Baroque art is where they start doing perspective. Brunelleschi took a board, drilled a hole in the middle of it, got a mirror, and stood in the central arch of the Santa Maria del Fiore before it was constructed, looked out at the baptistry. He looked through the hole in the board, took the mirror in front, and moved it back and forth, and then painted on this side of the board the baptistry. You could stand in this spot, look through this hole, see the baptistry, and then put a mirror in front, and it looks exactly the same. And that's all my favorite parts of Brunelleschi's Dome. Very interesting book.